I know teachers right now are into their 40s who are still paying college loans off.
The people that aren't in education complain about what we're not doing in education. You're like, all right, so the people that are doing cool stuff, you almost have borderline a moral obligation to say, all right, this is what I'm doing then.
Let me ask you a very quick question. Is it easier to get a passport than it is to substitute teach?
Yep, like be lazy. Well, if I'm training people to be teachers, be lazy. Yeah, shut up and let them do it.
There's two emotions that I straddle, right? Is hope and worry. So I'm worried to death about kids, but I'm super hopeful about the future.
Education wants the instant gratification. They want the weeds. They don't want the trees.
CTE is coming gangbusters for the traditional, practitioners who don't want to even entertain moving things around for the sake of efficacy.
Do we need as much time as we need to do school?
I mean, if you're asking a 14-year-old, they're going to tell you a weekend will be fine. But no, I want to challenge kids.
If you're about to listen to this podcast, buckle up.
You're listening to the Disrupt Education Podcast. Here are your hosts, Peter Hostrawser and Alli Dahl.
Welcome back to the Disrupt Education Podcast. Peter Hostrawser here with Alli Dahl. Alli, here we are. Let's do this. What's happening?
I don't think we recorded this from last week's episode, but I want to start here. So Dan said, we had Dan Thomas on last week, and he was like, I'll always take a 30-minute phone call with someone because 30 minutes can change your life. And I think about that with the podcast oftentimes because I know, and certainly from your almost 10 years of doing the podcast and me almost 3 years in now, it's like, really, how much has our experience and our lives changed from these 30 to 40-minute conversations with guests over time? Like, it really does compound. You just never know which one is going to be like what you needed to hear. Right. I was also thinking about that when he said that. I'm like, when I go skydiving, you're working on like micro skills and you never know which jump, right? Like which 30 seconds to a minute, you're going to have that kind of aha moment and kind of take things to the next level, and it can transform you in the sport. And, there are certain like benchmarks, but it is this like compounding factor. And so that just kind of speaks to the person that Dan is, and he's very open and he's curious and wants to explore even 30 plus years into the education. And, I look around at, educators that are in the space for that long. They're always kind of like, they're just open, right? They're always open to learning. They're open to more, and I see that in the skydiving space too. The people who stay in it for decades are the ones that's like, I'm always ready for that next jump, that next thing that could transform me in the sport and can transform me as a learner, can transform me as a professional. Like, you can apply that to whatever space you're in. And that mindset is so powerful, especially in the spring. Like, I needed to hear that.
Yeah.
So,
a 30 plus year veteran who is that humble and dropping the knowledge that he dropped on the podcast last week. The number one thing I took from it is the relationship with your students. And I know we've heard that before, but it hits a little different when a 30-year plus veteran says it and is still enjoying being a middle school teacher. I mean, there's a little bit of a goof there, but like, and helping people, and utilizing not only his own skill sets, but letting the students go and create, and then having these conversations with them. That is just humbling. I think that is where the rubber meets the road. I think that is the legitimate factoring data that we all need, that communication with our students and having time to explore, move around, and just have offside micro conversations, I think is what he said, happening in a classroom is I, that's all I need to know right there. When somebody who
Mm-hmm.
is at that level in a small rural school, by the way,
Yep.
and in just enjoying life. So, and again, there's mindset in there. So that I think that was the number one thing of many things that I know we're going to unpack today, that Dan came to the table with, and again, that's that half an hour conversation that we had, where we can take that and it kind of changes your lives bit by bit.
Sure does. And I'll be honest, the conversation with Dan didn't go in the direction I thought it was going to.
Hmm.
Like, as we podcast a lot of people, we do our research, we have questions, but you and I, like, we kind of let the conversation often go, where our guests kind of take it. And I was like, for sure we were gonna go, and it's not that he didn't. Like, I want to be clear, he actually tied and answered the questions super well. I just thought he was going to have a different perspective on like gamification and project-based learning.
Hmm.
And he was like, yeah, I do these things. But my favorite thing that he kind of talked about was he's like, kids don't come to school to watch me work. What a
Love that.
release. What a release, like, as an educator, to be like, so if you that reframe alone, it answers so many of the questions around how should I teach? But it's not about you, right? It's about like the students and like what do they need. And I've heard this, I'm sure you've heard this hundreds of times, like, kids don't care what you know until they know you care.
Hmm.
He just framed it in, I would consider, a very relevant 2025 manner, and has stayed true to that over the course of your career. You just don't stay in education for 30 plus years if you don't care about kids and they care about you. Like, there is a mutual, understanding, respect relationship that happens with students. And he's clearly teaching the students science,
Hmm.
which is oftentimes, especially middle school, where kids start to like shy away from math or science or whatever subject is deemed hard or they're not good at, they've decided, or their peers have decided. He just gave a lot of freedom in his answers to be like, it doesn't matter really, you what ed tech software, how you gamify, you got to find balance, and you got to connect with the kids. And he showed that in so many different ways, and it just wasn't what I was expecting. I was like,
Yeah.
we're going to get a lot of science, and it was like so much relationships. And it's just like, you can never hear that enough times. Like, you always need to hear it more.
Right. Yeah. And along with that, going back into those conversations and, the craving of what a young person like maybe want, like the accountability part. As he was explaining that, I was thinking in my own practice, when we're having conversations, with students, the listening is probably the most overlooked skill as educators in traditional education, right? It's like, I know best, you don't. And I know a lot of people in the education field who have struggled with that, including me on certain days. However, what I'm trying to say here is when a student comes to you and is angry or upset or whatever, I had a student, and I wrote, there's a LinkedIn post out there on this.
Very good post. It's a
Thank
very
you.
good post.
Yeah, and that actually happened. It was a student really like threw, a couple daggers at myself in an email. And once you unpack it and listen and say, I hear you. Let's talk about it. I'm not here to, catch you or anything like that. I just want to hear, what are you thinking, and let's fix it, right? No big deal. Um, my old me or any, you catch somebody on the wrong day. I think that's what Dan was saying. You take a step back and not react, but respond, but take a moment And then this is a 16, 15, 14, whatever year old student that you're working with. You really, my mentor always said, "Are you really going to get an argument with a 14-year-old? I mean, is it worth it? It's not that take that passion and that anger and the energy that they have and turn it into something positive." I mean, again, that was my take on it, but Dan does this every day, and I'm sure he didn't go that deep into some of his stories, but I will tell you, his blog and the way he frames it, I feel like the student in his blog, like he lets kind of let us go, like he said, into reading his blog, and there's not like it's my favorite movies where at the end you have to think, did that really happen? Did something else happen? I know a lot of people don't like that because in movies I just want to get away,
Christopher
wrap it up.
Nolan movies,
Yeah.
like Inception. I love that movie.
Yes. Yes. And you're like thinking which level is he on? And you're like, yeah, your mind's spinning. The end of Sopranos, you don't know what happened, right? Did it happen? Did it not happen? So to me that gets you thinking, and he is an expert at it. Very, very, very good conversation last week.
I loved it. It is really good. The piece about like your hands know what they're doing, your head gets in the way. And I I don't know if you've ever tried this technique. It's something I learned from like a friend who is in counseling for like couples therapy, more like that's the work she does.
Mhm.
And she was like, if you ever have an upset kid, it's really good to have like a piece, like some object, some token, something for them to be manipulating, or you as well, because it literally de-escalates and it like opens up your mind because your hands are just kind of like talking, almost like talking things out as well as your mind. And he does this really cool build with the Lego bricks, to open the class. And I'm
Mhm.
thinking, whatever kids are bringing to the classroom, the reason he's probably seeing this increased engagement and decrease in behaviors is because through the physical like manipulation of the Lego bricks and just building something kind of lets your mind cool off whatever it is that you were bringing into the space. It's like a clearing of it. You're able to kind of like build your way to learning.
Yeah.
And I I just think that's such a great way to engage students, especially if you're sensing like, higher energy levels or lower energy levels. It's just like you feel like something's off. It's like a shorter version. I'm thinking of like a Google Power Hour. And it's really into this agile learning idea of, collaboration, flexibility, and speed. You're right. You have a
Mhm.
short amount of time. It's not a recipe. You're not following this list of ingredients to make something. It's an open space you're creating. And then, he says he does partner and team builds and stuff too. So there's a lot in that why I think it's so effective and that it could be used if you are experiencing low engagement, high behavior. Get kids building something, get
Mhm.
their hands busy, and see what happens. I was 100% picturing this because I know after I got my students checked off with their lab safety and they could go and like start a lab after, we did a quick little whatever the safety specifics were, and just let them go, and they were doing stuff with their hands. The energy change was always palpable. It's like kids would
Mhm.
like leave whatever they had brought into the classroom, it was like gone because they were doing something tactile with their hands. That motor piece is so important in learning. And so however you can incorporate that more, even adults need it, but certainly kids.
Keep them moving, right? I mean, that's there. So my position has changed a little bit because I teach two courses, 2 periods a day. They are blended, so it's a little bit different. So we see our kids, maybe once a week or something like that. We don't see them every day, but if I'm like building, I build a lot of curriculum. We're building a program and constantly reevaluating things. My co-coordinator and I do get up. I actually get up when the bell rings, which is kind of funny in my office or the cubicle or whatever you want to call it. And I go stand outside and the kids give me energy, like walking by and there's a few. I see some of the students that I don't have many, but that's something that brings me energy. It also takes me back to my previous school when I was teaching the internship course. There was more of a cooperative learning. And unfortunately, and I say unfortunately, that they did not have a blended model. So we had internship students in class every day. So I say that out loud, and people like just like you did there, you're like, what? That doesn't sound right. They had another period that they could get off, but they'd be like, why are they not? And it's the stuck of a traditional kind of system. They never really reevaluated the way they did it. Um, but one of the things that I would do is there were at least 6, 7 times a year, and we didn't do it every day, but we would spread it out. And we just get up, and I usually had about 10 to 15 students. I'm like, let's go walk around the school. As long as you're not bugging anybody, we'll walk the halls in the cold. If it was warm, we would go outside. We had a couple kids with a frisbee or football and everything. I can remember, Allie, the conversations that I had with the students and learning about them more in those active moments than I can raise your hand if, tell me this, versus in the, what did he call it? The row of cemetery plots? Like, wow.
Cemetery row.
Wow. All right. I know that wasn't his, but whoever said that, like, if you're listening, do tell, or if you've heard it from somebody. But anyway, so my point is, like, what he was saying is what do you remember? And it's being with your friends and yeah, well, the kids would kind of group up, and some kids would throw a football over here or whatever, and I would try to throw it. My arm would get sore because I'm an old man. But born in the late 1900s, as Dan said. Wow, that was harsh. But I digress. Just talking about like just moving around, and it's okay to just everybody just pause. Let's do a Lego build. Let's do a puzzle. And I remember all the different classes. It just shot back a whole bunch of memories where we had freedom to kind of choose and play around and have conversations. The engagement level shot through the roof.
Oh.
We had to get through things, and we did, but to do those active pieces, like, he was talking about with the Lego build or something like that at the beginning, we would come back into the class and we're like, all right, guys, we have to, let's just take a look at this for the next 15 minutes or whatever, the end of the class. And the engagement was through the roof. And that's just brilliant stuff. So, yeah. Thank you, Dan.
Yeah. Thank you, Dan. Right. And, he coupled that with kids still need accountability. They don't need a friend. They come to school to see their friends, and they have a lot going on, and you build those relationships, but then hold them accountable. I am a firm believer in high expectations. I mean, like the program that you run, like you have to have high expectations. Yeah. Most of the guests that run programs, like the expectation is very high and you have a lot of accountability for yourself and to the program and to the people that you're interning with or working with. But I always found that students would rise to the level of expectation that you set. And, it seems simply stated, but my whole career teaching, I never had behavior issues. I mean, I had students, of course, that failed my class, for whatever the reason. They just, that moment in time wasn't the best season for them, for whatever reason. But I never had to call the principal and be like, little Susie, little Johnny is acting out and misbehaving, because I had built a relationship and I held kids accountable. Like I cared, but also like was like, did you do your homework? Like, are you taking time to learn the material? I regularly still say, like, your brain is your largest muscle.
Mm-hmm.
You have to use it. Um, and I really do like that piece, right? We can add all the software, all the flashy pieces in education, but
Mm-hmm.
it comes down to the basics more and more. And the more and more I see it, like disrupting education is coming down to building relationships in real time, in real life, and not on a screen. And it's holding kids accountable to whatever the learning environment you've created,
Mm-hmm.
and they will rise. They want to. Your brain, it's a muscle. It wants to be worked. It's like, please let me learn. Like Dan can say, like, kids come to school for their friends. A lot of kids love learning because your
Mm-hmm.
brain is literally lights up. It's like, oh my gosh, I just learned all this stuff about my world. Like, what else is out there? It's like you're primed for it in those age range. So I would say, like, maybe you get them in the building so they can see their friends, but once you get them into learning, most people love to learn when they have like good
Yeah.
experiences around learning. So just making it fun and gamifying it, and what's fun to you is going to translate. Like
Mm-hmm.
that whole bringing your passion thing, it really does. I know, like, when, man, I would get so lit up about water and how much I love water and the temperature which I love water and like how water interacts with things because it's super related to chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
And the kids would, of course, be like, oh, like, oh, there she goes again talking about water. But I will tell you what, kids today still know that how I like my water, and I'm very particular about it. And there would be memes about it and hanging up in my classroom. The students would make all about my water, and it's like they thought that was funny, but it was 100% related to the learning. I could tie it in any day, and they would just chuckle and laugh. But I'll tell you what, they remember it because
Mm-hmm.
it was just like this funny thing. And I'd be like, how do you take your water? Have you thought about it? Like, whatever it was. I was passionate about it and it translated.
The If you don't see her, she just took a drink of water here, by the way. Um, the well, you kind of brought something up there that's very interesting, like meme creation. That's fun, engaging. It'll humble a teacher, but yeah, let's create it, right? I love that. There, you know, I- there's just a couple of thoughts that I have around, like, you know the the disruption of education. As we all know, like, I teach in a field that is an elective, right? And when you're in that part of a school, um, students have to vote with their feet, and classes that don't go well don't go the next year usually, unless it might be an administrative shift or whatever that happens. Oh well. But kind of to that point of Allie being the water queen, which now I'm creating my own meme in my head. So just riding a wave of water in a parachute or something. Okay. Uh, Listeners, you can kind of create something in your mind. You should all send us a water meme, by the way,
Oh
for
my
Allie.
gosh, that'd be so
Yeah,
funny.
we'll see what we get. But I think, one of the things is that you just you've got to be engaged in reality. Yeah, they might have been like, oh boy, there's Miss it was Privet back then, but there's Miss Privet back then, like doing the water thing, and here she goes again. But I guarantee they learn something, right? And you're
Mhm.
engaged, and you're happy, and you're just like, let's go. You're excited, and that excitement. So for me in business departments or in CTE departments, the ones that flourish are the educators who are just that. They are excited to be there, but they're not just like rah rah, let's go, and I love, business and money or whatever it is, whatever your subject is. It's, I want to learn about what you like, and what do you
Mhm.
like that has to do with, well, you use water. Like, what are the different things that you like that, Nothing like a really hot shower in the morning or whatever it is, right? But you have those moments with the students, and then I mean, it's human nature. Like people will start to be attracted to something if you have two areas here. If you have like an area of this looks really, I don't want to use the word fun, but engaging and but a little bit scary, but it's engaging and it makes me curious. Or you have over here, which is a pillow and a desk. You may some days hit that pillow at the desk, but eventually you're going to get bored with that and you're going to see everybody over here doing some crazy stuff. That's how you build programs. And
Mhm.
as an educator, you've got to reach down and find out how to really listen and learn with your students within the realm of the curriculum that you are teaching, and have it is highly individualized, but man, when you get there, you're gonna be like Dan at 30 years, 30 plus years. You're gonna be like, yeah, I'm retiring, but I'm still gonna be working here and there and doing some different things here. I just that's what I hear, and like you said there, like now I'm thinking about Alli and water, and I'm like, okay, what are the different things that now, and we could do a whole water podcast, but I'm curious to know, what do you know about water that I don't, that I need to know, I'm sure we'll
Mhm.
have that conversation in one of our podcast meetings, but that you just made me curious about it. So
Yep.
to your point, that's exactly how Dan works. That's disrupting education right there. It's not, I'm going to pound the curriculum at you. Please get a good score on this test. I mean, I think we've heard it time and time again from our guests that when you back off, let them go, which was another term that Dan used. Let them go, um, and let them work, and then let's have these engaging conversations. I yeah, I think that's it. That's disruption
Right.
of education.
It is. That's one 30-minute conversation that'll change your life. You just
Bingo.
never know where it's going to take you. And I think it's really freeing to for educators to hear this time of year that kids don't come to school to watch me work.
Love that.
I think when you're having, a challenging time in education, remembering like reframing like why you're there, like why is anyone there? Like, is it really these little standards that you write on the board?
Hmm.
Or like, is it just, I think it's getting kids curious about the world around them. I
Hmm.
always said that chemistry was the vehicle in which I could help students better understand the world. And that frame alone helped me interact with the curriculum day in and day out differently because I'm like, how can I use this vehicle to get kids to wonder? Because that will transform their life if they just, rather than like walking around with blinders on, if they just question the world around them and like get curious about it, I win. And so am, I've always been super curious. And like I got really curious about water because I was teaching about it and I
Hmm.
kind of like got like really extra as the years went on, obviously. But it got kids curious then about stuff. And it's just finding your way to like bring your passions. And it's not about you, like they're not there to watch you work, but
Hmm.
they are there to help, like they are interested in like their world.
Hmm.
And if you can help reframe it and get them curious about it in whatever you're passionate about, it's gonna collect more kids. It's gonna, get them excited about being there. And that's totally definitely based on relationships and everything else, but your passions do matter. And I think I can remember years in hard times in teaching where I just didn't have that like
Hmm.
super excitement. And it's because I just lost my reframe. Like I wasn't teaching when I was podcasting. I think I would have a different it's like the like new energy after
Hmm.
coming off of an episode because you're like, okay, I have this reframe and now I can like settle into the classroom totally differently because I just heard this awesome thing that Dan Thomas said.
Hmm. I want to kind of wrap this one up, challenging our listeners to do something. And this is, I think this is where my brain says I'm going to challenge you to kind of think about this. For an educator, if you go back into your school days, and some of them were a lot closer than mine, but if I'm going to challenge people to go back into their schooling and think of maybe like there 3 moments that come to your mind right away. Like what like do you remember? And I'm going to guarantee you that there was an event there. There was probably some action. There was somebody who cared. You know, unfortunately, it might have been traumatic, but there was an event. There was something that happened. And how can you take those events and utilize that skill to be something that you can use for your students now? Can you create an event, obviously not a traumatic one, but a positive one, or something that is actionable that your students are going to remember? Because I can also, on the flip side of that, I remember being in classes, like I was registered for the classes. Alli, I don't remember a single thing in those classes. Like, I remember the teacher and maybe a few friends in the classroom. I remember zero. And I don't want to say what curriculum it was or whatever. But I also remember those challenges and where I was held accountable to do something that made me a little bit uncomfortable that changed my life. So that's my challenge to all our listeners, is just to go back into your own schooling. And usually educators will be like, there was something that made me want to become a teacher. It might have been a teacher or something like that. There's a why there. So, I mean, you can, go back in, but that's the challenge I'm going to leave everybody with. Just to think about that. And then how can you capture that? I can see you're thinking, so you're probably like, yeah, I got like 3 things there. Maybe we'll reveal all of ours. I'm sure if you've heard this, our podcast over and over, you've probably heard 2 or 3 things that why we have become teachers, right, Alli? That's something that comes about. So we got a couple more great guests coming up. I can't wait. Again, these conversations are happening. I just want to make a weird note here. I know this is, later in the spring, early summer when these are coming out. But the day that we are recording this is the 5-year anniversary of the shutdown of COVID.
Whoa!
5 years today. So we are recording this on March 13th. And I just wanted to reflect and have people think, what was it like? What did you take from that to make education better, right? And that may help springboard you into kind of, all right, there were tough times, but not everything was bad. So think about those things. I'm embracing the spirit of Dan Thomas said, because I think he just brought it last week. So we're gonna end it there, and we got a great guest coming up next week. Stay tuned. Can't wait to share their stories with you and unpack it. So for Alli Dahl, I'm Peter Hostrawser. We'll catch you next time on the Disrupt Education Podcast. That's a wrap on this episode of the Disrupt Education Podcast. Let's keep the momentum going. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share this episode out.
If you want to dive deeper into disrupting education, visit our website at disrupteducationpodcast.com.
Here's the bottom line. We believe real change in education starts locally. It happens when communities come together to rethink learning. If you're an educator, school leader, or organization looking to take action towards real change in education, we are here to help. Reach out and connect.
And we'd love to hear your thoughts on today's episode. So drop us a line wherever you listen. And until next time, take that bold step beyond your comfort zone. Challenge the status quo and be the change education truly needs.
Because at the end of the day, education isn't just about subjects. It's about students. And when we dare to disrupt, the future of learning is waiting.